Okay, so
Hi,
in this
Geri.
segment, this is self-care strategies, and we just thought it would be fun to just ask each other questions and just see where it leads. As far as self-care, what experiences we have had that we can share with you, and maybe some ideas of what we've done or what we have seen help for self-care strategies. So we're gonna, I think what we'll do is just ask our questions. I'll start out. Is that okay, Klea?
Yeah, I think Mindy probably wants to turn her camera off until it's her. There we go. Okay, good. Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
Okay, so my question for you, which you might have a similar question, is what caregiving experiences have you had in your life?
So as far as caregiving goes, I've been fortunate to be able to care for my husband's grandparents. Um, it, my dear grandparents are up in Canada, and I've always loved the older adult population. So as my husband and I settled in the home that he grew up in, I kind of adopted his grandparents. But it was a very unique situation because I wasn't a blood relative and I was a relative by marriage. It created a very interesting dynamic with the extended family, but we can talk about that more later. So my husband's grandparents, as well as, of course, children. And I hope that you are probably receiving a lot of great information that you might pass on to young mothers as well. And then also, I've been in a caregiving capacity since I was in high school and college. I was a homemaker for several elderly couples that were going through this time in their life. So they called it a homemaker. So I would come in and clean and cook and take them shopping and help them with things around the house. So, and then, and also delivering Meals on Wheels. I guess you could call that a little aspect of jumping in and visiting and being a point of contact for the people on my route. I did that for 9 years as well as a volunteer. So
one thing I've known about you is you're very willing to volunteer in the community, and I love that about you.
So Geri, tell me about you. Now, when did you start caregiving and what have been your experiences?
So, good question. So I'm not sure how far back to go, but anyway, when I was young, I loved to go over to this elderly woman in our neighborhood. I think I was like 6 years old because I was worried that she was lonely. And so I used to go across the street and go over because I was going to go help her to sweep and clean and just visit and stuff with her to make sure she wasn't lonely. And I have always been that way. I used to get worried about anybody who was alone, and they might have been enjoying themselves, but it wasn't good for me to see that. So anyway, so I've always, I don't know why I've been that way. And my parents used to take us to see all of our grandparents and great aunts and stuff every single week. We would go visit. So it's kind of ingrained in me to be a caregiver. I started caring for my grandfather when I was 18. I lived with him for 24/7 for just about a little over a month because he had a broken hip. So I cared for him during that time and helped him get through some depression by making it fun and doing crazy things with him. And he'd be going, "What are you doing?" But anyway, it worked out. He got better and did well. I cared for my great aunt who had Alzheimer's. And that was probably the most challenging thing I've ever done in my life. I was newly married when I did that. And ever since then, I have really felt great passion for anybody who cares for somebody who has dementia because it's a real struggle. I also had an experience where I was doing some volunteer work in a habilitation therapy, not habilitation therapy, a developmentally delayed like a skilled nursing facility. And I was volunteering there, and I was just going to go for one day. And while I was there, I found an aunt, and I didn't know she existed. And
like a blood aunt?
Yes, it was my my dad, well, she was my dad's first cousin, but I call her an aunt. And she was developmentally delayed. She was put in a facility at the age of 9, not to have contact with family. The only one that sent her things was her sister. And her whole life, she wanted to have contact with family. So she was in her late 50s, probably 58 at the time. So in order for me to continue that relationship with her and keep her in with family while I was going to school and working, I decided to pick up a job on the weekends working at the facility where she worked, or where she lived, so that I could make sure that I made time for her. So, and I was able to reconnect her with family members, which was really great. And then I also helped care for my mother, who had leukemia and passed away from leukemia. And then I was a distance caregiver, helping my stepmother take care of my dad before he passed. So, and I've also had some like mental health issues going on with family members too. And so I feel like I've had caregiving in a whole bunch of different arenas. So I'm grateful for the experiences that I've had, because I feel like they have helped me to have a passion for helping other people.
Ooh, wow. I love that you said you've had opportunities for caregiving experiences. And, when you said that and hearing you describe all of these things, I think we're all kind of sitting at home thinking, oh my goodness, I think I've been a caregiver my entire life too. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like just a certain stage that you have in life. It is a way of living.
Yeah.
It's, do you care about other people? Well, then you're a caregiver. And,
yeah.
And do you look for ways to lift and love? Well, then you're a caregiver. And it's not just something you check off your list. Oh, I learned the caregiving part of mortality. Now I get to move on. There's always somebody. And when you have a heart for looking for those who could use an extra help, it's there'll always be somebody to care for. There always will be.
Right. So Klea, I just noticed somebody has put in a chat for pretty much a question for you. Do you want me to read that to you?
Oh yeah. Okay. So yeah, why don't you read out loud while
Okay, I'll read it out loud. I would like to know more about the dynamic for helping with Klea's grandparent-in-laws. Before I finish this, feel welcome to ask some questions of us while we go along. That's probably even more helpful than what we have planned. So
yeah, I know. We have a whole list of
right. Yeah. If people have questions, we have questions. Okay. So we've taken in our 2 elderly neighbors who don't have family close. Grandkids haven't stepped in to help them. It's a blended family, and they lost one of the only 2 children this spring, and the other one doesn't seem concerned. They are older and are in need of help. We have noticed more than anything, they just need the daily communication and recognition from family. It's a boundary, how much to step in, and if their family does try to step in, when do we step out? And not sure that would be easy after caring for them and taking care of them and their immediate needs.
Oh man,
that's a great question and a tough one.
It's so hard because like I talk to my clients about long-term care insurance, right? Or what are your plans for long-term care? And I say, your best plan for long-term care is loving other people, because then their hearts will be drawn to love you when it's your turn to need help. And it sounds like that's what's happened in your neighborhood with these, with this couple that your heart is drawn to them. You have a relationship of kindness and caring, and you want to be there for them in their need. And I absolutely agree. It is so hard. It's so hard when you're so invested in their day-to-day and you see the sorrow in their eyes. I don't know if you all remember that really old film, The Mailbox. That's where I got my caregiver heart, frankly, because I would cry watching that movie of this elderly lady who the little girl would come and visit, and she just wanted to hear from her children. And then she had a heart attack when she got a letter in the mail or something I'm like, oh my laws. That it's kind of that dynamic that you're on the front lines and you're seeing it. And I hate to say, but it's not always pretty. In my own experience, the family member who was the power of attorney and the healthcare agent for my aging grandmother-in-law, did not believe her as she aged and thought she was faking it as she was developing various healthcare issues. And it became me pitted against him and the rest of the family, and an ombudsman was called in to be able to negotiate and navigate that dynamic, because I was very passionately advocating for grandma, and it was against her child. So be really aware. I would encourage you to be very clear on what elder abuse looks like. Make sure that you're really clear on the capacity issues and healthcare agents, how they talk to them, how they talk about them, if they are not, if they're afraid or concerned, or those family members aren't involved on the front lines. Make sure that they feel empowered to appoint a healthcare agent that they feel will advocate for them, instead of just defaulting to a child who may not be treating them with respect or listening to their needs and to their concerns. That was the mistake that I made, and I would just like to pass it on to you. Please pay attention to those things, because even though grandma wanted me to be her agent, I abdicated. I didn't want to get involved in that because I didn't want to face that child. But now, as I look back, I would have, and I encourage all my clients, make sure that you trust your instinct. And if that means having somebody else other than a family member take that role, even a professional would be better. And I have counseled some clients to have a professional be their healthcare agent rather than a.
So I have seen where sometimes neighbors or friends will step in and help for a little while, but when the time comes that the family finally decides, hey, this needs to be my job, sometimes they kick the friend or person out, and it might be because of guilt or whatever there might be there, and not let them have contact with that person, or I would just say be prepared, like, because you're not blood related, and if it's not a legal thing set up, be prepared that if the family chooses, they can say, hey, we're going to step in now, we don't need you anymore.
And just navigate that, because a healthcare agent, document, if you are appointed through a document, that is a way to avoid that situation. Yeah. So just be aware of that, as well as power of attorney. Yeah. So, because you don't have a right when it comes to that decision making.
So let me ask you another question here.
Well, I just got that question. Let me ask you.
Okay.
So tell me about what you've seen as you yourself have experienced caregiving, as you've worked with others who've been in the caregiver support groups that you've created here that have benefited so many people. What's been a theme of those who've been able to self-care? What does that look like when you see a really good example of that?
Thanks, Klea. So what I love about the caregiver support groups is, first of all, I wish they were around. I don't think they were when I was a caregiver. And when I started the caregiver support groups in 1999, I started to heal myself, even though I had no, my aunt had passed away and I wasn't like deep into the caregiving as much. I noticed I started to heal from some of the guilt and shame that I felt from maybe like getting too upset, or I wish I didn't do this or that, and realized, oh my gosh, I was there and I was doing my best. And what I did, like just taking my aunt, and I remember, I'll share this quick story. And to me, it was like the worst thing, because it's my aunt and it's, and I thought I was just horrible, but we were in Salt Lake. It was on the hill. It was snowing like crazy. We were shoveling snow up over our heads, and my aunt every like so often every 20 minutes would come out and say, "You lazy butts, get out there and shovel." And here we are out there shoveling. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So like, I think it was the 5th time she came out, I just lost it. And I went up to her, I turned her around, held her on the shoulders. I didn't say anything. I walked her back into the house. I had her sit on the chair and I said, "Stay." That was it. And I left. I went back out and shoveled. And I felt so bad. I felt so bad that I got that upset at my aunt. And anyway, so when I did the groups, it just made me feel so much better that like, oh my gosh, everybody has these moments and it's okay to have these moments. And so when I see caregivers come in, the first thing that I see in a support group is, first of all, just coming to your first group can release a lot of emotions. Just having people pay attention to what you're going through and hear your story and seeing that other people are experiencing something similar and you're not alone. And just that piece of it alone makes a huge difference, because usually that's when the tears flow. So expect that. It's okay. I'm fine with crying. I cry a lot and it's okay. It's okay to feel those emotions and know that pretty much every caregiver that was there has done the same thing. And so coming in, and then it's interesting to see the change like after that, and then learning from the other caregivers and the expressions that you have of self, and say, what do you do in this situation? And what did you guys do? And who knows a good doctor, and mine isn't doing so hot or whatever, I mean, what do I do if they start getting more delirious, and what's going on with that? And they can answer those questions. Oh, my loved one had that experience. And it's interesting to see the changes that occur as somebody participates in the support groups. And it looks like we are finished with our segment. That was very, very quick. So thanks everyone for participating. And I hope that this was helpful